The eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that last week there was a certain question left unanswered.
How do I improve?
And you would be correct. I mentioned things that would help, but didn't directly tell you how to improve. But I don't think I can. The answer would be different for everyone. Every player in this game is at a different level, playing different things, enjoying the game in different ways, so there's no one exact and all-encompassing answer on the subject. There are, however, definitely some great general tips to help you on your way, habits that are better built sooner rather than struggled for later. For starters, accuracy is your friend. The first thing you really want to be doing is making sure you can hit 99% or above accuracy on any map within your comfort zone. It doesn't necessarily have to be first try, as playing a map without knowing it can be daunting, but being able to hit mostly 300s and not dropping slider ends often is enough. Doing this builds patience, something a lot of people don't have when they start. Between every circle in every map, there's always a certain length of time you have to wait before clicking again. You can click again whenever you want, of course, and as long as you're in the hit window, you'll still hit the note. But clicking too soon, or too late, will lose you points, and ultimately devalue the score a little. This is probably the most important tip out of any that can be given, since it applies to every genre of song, every type of map, and every selectable mod. It also sets you up for future improvement, since if you have a good accuracy base, you can focus on other skill sets without having to worry too much about whether you're clicking on time or not. However, to click accurately, you have to know, at least to some degree, when to click. This is where reading comes in. Reading has many different definitions depending on who you ask, but however abstract they might be, they all boil down to the acquisition of two simple pieces of knowledge: knowing when to tap, and knowing how to move to get to the next circle. For a game mode like Taiko or Mania, the more a specific pattern appears, and the more times you've played it, the easier it becomes to react to and perform while you're playing. You're essentially learning the motion you need to make, and repeating that same motion when you repeat the pattern again. The same general idea applies with Standard as well. Underneath the extra dimension of play gained through aim, every pattern is likely very similar to another in some map somewhere. For this reason, the more unique maps you play, the more patterns you're exposed to, and the faster you'll learn to recognize patterns similar to those you've already played. Along the same line, the more times you've seen a certain rhythm appear, the better you'll get at recognizing that same rhythm when it appears again, and the more accurate you'll get at tapping it. Combine this with the knowledge you've gained of how to move to hit the pattern, and it's possible to transfer this onto maps you've never played before, which include the same pattern, as well as larger and faster examples of the same pattern, and ultimately, harder and harder maps. On the topic of hard maps, it almost goes without saying that when looking for improvement, you should try not to stick at one difficulty range for too long. The easiest way to phrase this is, play what is hard. And to expand on that, don't play things you know you can't do. If you're hitting 99% on 3 stars pretty easily, move up to 3.5 or even 4 stars until they become pretty easy too. Keep to maps you find hard but not impossible, and keep progressing. At some point, those maps you thought impossible will still be as difficult, but may actually seem possible after all. When you've spent enough time in the game to be playing insane difficulties around 4.5 to 5 stars, and getting 99% on them, if you're anything like I was, you'll likely be looking for an extra challenge to keep things fresh. It's very likely you'll press F1 or click this button and discover modifications. Mods change how maps are played. Different mods do different things to your gameplay, they multiply your score by a fixed amount, and they can even be combined to yield more score bonus. Using them constantly is oh so tempting, but generally not a great idea until you have a mastery of the basics of the game. For example, Hard Rock flips the map upside down, makes the circles smaller, and makes accuracy windows tighter. This may seem like the perfect way to make maps harder to play, but another thing it does is raise the approach rate, usually to 10. The circles now appear far later than usual, making them harder to react to and read properly before they have to be hit. If you decide to learn this mod and start playing with it more often than not, it can be very hard to go back to playing without. The maps will start to become too dense for you to properly tell what order the next circles are in, and what rhythm you need to tap. Sure, it looks good, you're hitting circles appearing seemingly at the speed of light, but ultimately, you'll be stunting your growth on the more basic aspects of the game that were just discussed. Hidden also affects how circles are displayed, yet in a vastly different way. It changes nothing about the map itself. Instead, the circles flash up briefly and then fade out again, literally being hidden from view. They still exist, and they still have to be hit, however the timing is unclear because of the absence of an approach circle to tell you exactly when to click. This loops back to reading. If you played a certain map enough to be able to read the rhythms and patterns appearing without having approach circles to help, you'll likely be able to play it without much issue. Similarly to Hard Rock, the density of what you're playing is being lowered through hiding the circles, which means if you play too much with it enabled, it becomes difficult to play without. Generally this isn't much of a concern though, since you would have to play Hidden only for weeks to feel this effect. The last mod you really have to concern yourself with is Double Time, which when applied will raise the speed the map runs at by 1.5 times. Brushing that inconsistency aside, every aspect of the map will also be multiplied by 1.5, including the approach rate and overall difficulty, where a higher number relates to a smaller hit window for a 300. The circle size remains the same though, since it doesn't really make sense to make the circle smaller if you're just going to be playing the same map but faster. Similarly to Hard Rock, once you speed up, it can be difficult to slow down again, even more so if approach rate numbers are starting to hit 8s and 9s before the addition of double time. Am I saying to avoid mods completely? Not really. It can be fun to experiment and pick a mod up to play on the side. However, if you're looking to improve, staying without a mod, affectionately called playing no mod, tends to be the best call. There's a natural difficulty progression along ranked maps, and they will naturally pick up in speed, spacing, and accuracy requirements as the difficulty level increases, whereas maps can sometimes be over or even underweighted when using mods. Of course, maps can also feel underrated regardless of mod, but that's a topic for another time. Moving on, it may also be tempting to spice things up by attempting to pass a map outside of your skill range. There are many players who attempt to defeat Airman, or show that they aren't afraid of the big black, and this can be fun in moderation, but when it becomes your sole reason to play is when it's gone too far. Yes, it's cool to say, I passed X, or I got a B rank on Y, but ultimately all you're doing is testing your high-end mechanical skill, and even possibly your luck. It's fun to do every so often for your giggles, but don't let it become something you pride yourself on, since a high accuracy 5-star FC contributes so much more to improvement than a keyboard mash pass on image material. In summary, play more. The age-old advice given to everyone, which essentially covers everything I've said today. Play as many different maps as you can, be patient when you play and keep your accuracy high, and skill will come naturally. Try and avoid mods while you're learning, and don't lose sight of the basics, since every map sits on top of that foundation. Stick to playing just above your skill level and keep pushing that way. You'll naturally know when the time is right to move to harder maps, or to start learning to play with mods more seriously. And always remember, please enjoy game.